Every single one of us has two primary emotional needs, and these needs are non-negotiable. Doesn't matter whether you want to have them or not. They are the emotional equivalents to food and water for our physical bodies. Well, while you may not die if these emotional needs aren't met, you certainly are not going to thrive and really be healthy and happy in your life. These two primary emotional needs are self-worth and a sense of love and belonging. Every single one of us wants to feel like we matter to the important people in our lives. We want to feel like they value us, that they appreciate us, that they want us around. And every single one of us wants to feel like we have a place where we belong, a safe place where we can get our needs met and where we get to feel loved. When these needs are being met, we don't tend to pay very much attention to them because that's how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to matter to the important people in our lives, and we're supposed to be safe with the important people in our lives. But when these needs are not being met, our brains will automatically do something to try to get those needs met. And most of the time, our brains aren't very good at doing that on their own. It works much better if we're directing that process. A few years ago, I had a couple that I was working with that had a really stressful event that had happened. They had just had their first baby, and she had been sick all day, throwing up, and he was at work. And she was just waiting, looking so forward to the time that he would come home, not only to relieve her from some of the duties of the baby, but also to be there to support her and to help kind of nurse her back to health. Well, he got home, and about 20 minutes after he had gotten home, his mom called, and his mom was in crisis. And he turned to her and he said, "I'm sorry, I've got to go." And he left. Well, as you can imagine, that totally made her feel abandoned, totally made her feel like she didn't matter to him and that she certainly wasn't emotionally safe with him. And so, needless to say, he returned home to a note on the bedroom door informing him that he was not welcome to sleep there. This illustrates a really important point, talking about our primary needs of wanting to feel like we matter to somebody and wanting to feel safe. There's a system in our brains whose entire job is to monitor and manage connection. This system isn't turned on all the time, just like the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn system isn't activated all the time. But when it does get turned on, there's a rule book or a blueprint that dictates how we respond in those moments when it does get turned on. And that system is called the attachment system. And that the job of the attachment system is to monitor and manage closeness, connection, to monitor and manage both physical and emotional proximity or closeness to our attachment figures. There are rules that dictate what and how we respond in those moments. But what are the things that turn that on? Because most of us aren't very, very aware of that. And the attachment system gets activated by what we refer to as disorganizing events. Disorganizing events are the events or the trigger that turn on that blueprint or that rule book in our brains. And there are two different things that function as disorganizing events or triggering events. The first one is anytime we experience an intense feeling, an intense emotion. Most of us are used to functioning within a certain range of emotions. For some people, the range that we function in is really narrow. For others, it's pretty big. But as long as we stay within that range that is normal to us, we tend to be okay, and the attachment system isn't activated. But when we get either a really intense positive emotion or a really intense negative emotion, so if I'm scared or anxious or sad or hurt or lonely, if I'm experiencing those negative emotions, it activates the attachment system. Likewise, if I'm experiencing really positive emotions, if I'm really happy, if I had a really cool experience at work, or maybe I went on a really cool run that made me really happy, or it might be that I had a spiritual experience that was powerful, or I'm turned on sexually. Anytime we experience an intense feeling, it turns on or activates the attachment system. The other thing that activates the attachment system, anytime there's a perceived or actual threat to our access to the attachment figure or our sensitivity from the attachment figure. So if we return to that example that I was talking about, him leaving when she was obviously disorganized, and her attachment system was turned on. Why? Because of how she was feeling emotionally, right? Because how she was feeling physically. Her attachment system was working. And what did he do? He left. And in that moment for him, it was more important to him to go be available to his mom than it was to be available to her. And so that was an actual threat to her access to him. And that activated her attachment system. And the way she responded was consistent with the rule book that had been wired into her brain. In our next video, we're going to talk about why this perceived actual access to our attachment figure and or sensitivity from them is so important, and why it turns on this system. Because what I really want you to remember is that the job of the attachment system is to take us from a disorganized emotional state to a reorganized emotional state. Managing our emotions and being able to stay emotionally organized is really, really important in life, because when we become disorganized emotionally, a certain percentage of our resources automatically get diverted to trying to get reorganized, to trying to get back up into our upper brains. And that is what the attachment system does. It clicks in, and it's designed to help us be able to go from an emotionally disorganized state back to being emotionally organized. And incidentally and interestingly, research has shown that there's nothing that works more effectively to do that than a healthy attachment relationship. Not exercise, not meditation or yoga. There's nothing that has been shown to work more effectively or efficiently than a healthy attachment system. And you're going to learn about how that works and why it's so important in the videos to come.